All right, welcome everybody. I am super pumped for this episode. I'm with my good friend Jen Toy here. Jen and I actually met in Mexico in Playa del Carmen this last summer of 2019, in either July or August, and it was super random. It was probably the first time I logged on to Upwork for a year, and I responded to this job posting um, about a mastermind. A guy was putting a mastermind together actually on Upwork, and of all the people that he could have put together in this mastermind, Jen and I were literally living like 2 blocks away from each other in Mexico and Playa del Carmen at the time, and we were one of 4 people that he got together to do this. So after that, Jen and I joined a mastermind together and had a couple really awesome calls. And I've really enjoyed getting to know her and getting to know about her business. She's coming at us live today from Goa, right? You're in Goa?
Yeah, India.
She's coming at us from Goa, India, and she's got a really cool business and a cool life story. So I'm really excited to have her on. So thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Why don't you tell me a little bit about you, or introduce yourself to the audience in terms of your background, as well as kind of what you're working on professionally, and introduce us to your little friend there as well, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, so we named him Dandelion for now. My boyfriend does a lot of animal rescue release here, and he gets calls often mostly for reptiles, snakes specifically, because people become afraid of them, so they kill them. So over the years, he gets called for all kinds of animals. And this guy had fallen out of a nest of some sort, and a neighbor called, and he was much fluffier before, almost like a little chicken. And he would definitely have not survived on his own. So we took him for, I don't know, we've had him for about 2 weeks, and we've just been feeding him until he gets big enough. Now he's trying to fly, but once he starts flying, we'll release him back into the wild. So, but for now, he's chilling, and he may at any given time fly onto my shoulder. It's starting to get a little bit later tonight, so he's awake. Otherwise, he'd be sleeping during the day. But yeah.
Man, that is so awesome. One of the perks to live in the nomad life in strange places, and also being able to work from home and have that little guy perch up on your shoulder and kind of help you through the workday. Cool. So what brought you to Goa? Tell us a little bit about like your immediate background. Like, how long have you been working online, and what are you up to?
Okay, so I was working in New York City before I came to Goa. I came to Goa around 5 or so years ago. And my experience is purely sales before this in the US. But in New York, I started working with a lot of startups, doing a lot of things, of course, as a startup, CRM, but mostly sales funnel things, marketing, and lots of different hats, of course. And when I came to India, I found a remote job doing something similar with sales, but I was working US hours, so 10 at night to around 4 in the morning. And it became very grinding for me to have that schedule. So I looked for something else. And through somebody, through a client that I had, the person that was doing the SEO and Google ads, we became friends, and he told me, hey, why don't you try and do this? You can kind of make your own hours, except for when you need to speak with clients. So then I got into it like that. I started first with SEO and really taught myself mostly everything from the internet, books I was recommended, and online classes and things like that. And from there, I moved into Google Ads because I liked the tangibility and the data and the analytics behind it. So I've been doing that for around, I'd say, maybe 3 years, just Google Ads purely, and I've been able to grow from that. So that's where I'm at now. Last year, I decided to register a business in the U.S. And because I wanted to expand, I wanted to hire contractors and things like that. So I really needed to become more legitimate.
Okay. And what are you doing with Google Ads right now? Could you explain to us like how your business is organized and what type of clients you're serving?
Yeah, my clients have, I've tried to niche down, and my clients generally are service-based businesses. So I have a lot of dentists or plumbers or piano teachers, often local. Some of them are targeting the US, but still their services are local. And just now I've been getting some, excuse me, a few e-commerce clients, but very small. All of my business are very small. Most of them are family-owned businesses, or they're run small to medium businesses. So I generally interact directly with the owner or a family member maybe that is, really tight within the business. That seems to be something that has worked really well with me. And so
Mm.
I've kind of stuck with that.
Okay, cool. And one of the things that we've talked about before that I think is really interesting to how you strategize in terms of getting new clients is like you're not trying to price yourself like a high-priced premium contractor. You're able to actually make a really good living and save a fair amount of money without having to like kill yourself necessarily with your hours by charging a lower rate. So could you tell us a little bit about like your philosophy in terms of getting new clients and how you've structured your pricing options?
Yeah. So I found when I was taking on bigger and bigger clients, which is what I did when I first started freelancing, because I was kind of chasing the money. You could see clients that had money or they wanted all of these things, and so I could charge them more for a lot of different products. I found that I was spent a lot of time trying to make sure that I could put all these pieces together, and every client tended to be different. So there was no way for me to template my offerings. When I tried to create service packages and things like that, I was all over the place. So it was really hard for me to routinize my business, and therefore I felt more difficult for me to expand
Yeah.
when I was offering all of these different things. So what I found is that if I kept my prices lower and offered more of a basic package, I could keep my clients for longer because I didn't have to justify my price point to them. It makes it so easy for them to pay me versus them either having to hire somebody in-house or to learn it for themselves. And they also didn't wonder, oh, what am I getting for this? Because I offered very basic things and the price is so affordable for them. That also helped me to kind of, I feel I don't have as high a turnover and my clients just kind of stay with me. So if I lose a client, I don't have to stress so much. I'll pick another one up and it doesn't affect my income, and you don't have that fear of survival every month, which
Yeah.
freelancers definitely are prone to.
Absolutely. I think one of the big lessons here in terms of like the way that you organized yourself in terms of your offering is one, from the very beginning or very early on, you decided like, I can't do everything. I'm going to focus on just this one thing. I'm going to do Google Ads and like, that's going to be my jam. And you just said no to everything else. That's something that a lot of people struggle with that I commend you for. So I think that's really awesome. And as well, you didn't really try to, be unique, like there's a lot of people selling Google ads. You can like people can, they could go to whoever they want, but they choose you because they like your price point's easy to get in on, and then at the same time you develop a relationship with them, which is also probably a reason why they stay with you, and then your price point is such that they won't shop you around. So you've been able to develop these really long-term clients and develop a really good living for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing that I ended up finding with my pricing is that I a lot of agencies like to hire me
Hmm.
private label. So I would say 75% of my business comes from other agencies
Okay.
who are outsourcing their Google ads to me. And by agencies, these are generally other freelancers like me that have created a business, but they're specializing in something else. They may be specializing in SEO or Facebook ads, and they also realize that to offer Google ads is a whole other aspect. They don't want to hire somebody because it would be expensive for them. It's not what they specialize in. And so they can have me do the work, and there's enough room for them to add margin to charge their client, and they don't really have to do anything. So that's worked out really well for me, is to private label my business for other agencies.
I think that's really awesome. How have you gone about, because another thing that is going to be important for the listeners to take away from this is understanding how you've gone about developing those strategic relationships. So how have you developed those relationships with agencies, or how has that work come to you, or tell us a little bit about how that's evolved over time?
I would say a lot of my work comes from Upwork, because I started on there and I built a really, really strong profile on Upwork. But I have gotten now word of mouth from other agency owners that were then, collaborating with other agency owners for specific niches that, again, they didn't have Google ads. And I've also gotten work off of LinkedIn, which is crazy. I would never have guessed, but I've had people contact me on LinkedIn for work.
So it sounds like a lot of your work just comes to you, which is awesome. And a lot of people would like to set themselves up like that. You've obviously done a good job of developing a little bit of a strategic partnerships or getting referrals. Obviously, you said with Upwork, one of the things, and correct me if I'm wrong, you've just been on Upwork for a long time and you've got a strong Upwork profile, so you just get job requests, right?
Yeah, I have a super strong profile. So when I turn my account on, I get a lot of invitations to interview. But I'm very selective now, because I want only clients that fit into my niche. So I think now with Upwork, I have been going for more agency owners versus small, just regular businesses. Yeah, and I do get a fair amount of those, because again, they're also small business owners. So for them to find resources to help them, Upwork is a really great place for them. And some of them even started on Upwork as well. So
Yeah, I did. And I've hired a lot on Upwork as well, and been hired on Upwork as well. One of the things that I I'm gonna go ahead and pause this real quick, actually. So, one of the big lessons for listeners that I want people to take away from is that when it comes to lead generation, when you are an independent freelancer or have a small agency with a couple people that you're outsourcing work to, which is more or less the position that Jen's in right now, Upwork can still be a really good source of leads, and I don't think that you should discount it. So many people discount Upwork as being this place where people don't pay a lot, you can't get really high quality clients, and you certainly can't find people that will work with you continuously or pay you any sort of monthly retainer or recurring income for a long period of time. Jen is a perfect example of that not actually being the case. In fact, she has too much work flow on Upwork that she can't even take all of the jobs. So if you really establish yourself well on the platform, that's really one of the secrets to Upwork these days, is just working within their system so that you actually rank high organically on their internal platform, and the jobs will ultimately come to you. As we've discussed, and what I used to do back in the day is a lot of outbound approach on Upwork, and I still think that's valid as well. But the main point here is don't discount that. Obviously, this is a real live example of someone that still gets a lot of high quality work from there. Let's talk about LinkedIn a little bit, because a lot of people are interested in lead gen, and for these type of businesses, I really recommend, and I believe that anyone can build a business to $20,000 to $50,000 per month just from organic methods, just connecting on Facebook, getting strategic partnerships set up like you have, and getting referrals, as well as Upwork, and LinkedIn is another one. So how are you going about your process on LinkedIn, and what does it look like in terms of getting jobs from there?
I am terrible. I have not done any kind of outbound kind of reaching out to people for work, because I have been focused more on trying to put processes in place to be able to expand my business infinitely. And so, instead of being, and I have the luxury of living in somewhere that my costs are quite low, so I don't have to, I can spend a lot of my time trying to build my business instead of having to worry so much about lead generation. But the leads that I got from LinkedIn, they contacted me. I can tell you that one contacted me with a job proposal that was completely not Google Ads. They contacted me with some technical SEO of something that I wasn't even interested in. And I actually gave him a full, not a breakdown, but a pretty, I gave him a response that had quite a bit of information of, what he should probably be looking for, why maybe I'm not a good freelancer for him. And because it wasn't the niche that I wanted, I had told him that, okay, here's your SEO, and if you want to do that, I can recommend you some people. But if you want to get into Google Ads, that's really what I'm focused on, and I'd love to help you in the future. And then he came back to me he said, well, that posting might not even be correct, but why can we jump on a phone call and discuss this more? And he ended up being an agency owner that has, all these clients and stuff. And what he had posted contacting me for was actually not even what he needed. So I've had that happen a few times also with Upwork, where they sometimes don't really know what they want. And I would, recommend anybody that is looking to get more business to not discount those kinds of interactions with people, because a lot of business owners, at least in my target, small business owners or medium to small business owners, the business owners themselves often don't understand marketing. So when they have a list of bullets of, oh, we need this, we need that, we need this, it might not even be the case. So when you get on the phone call with them and actually introduce yourself and you explain things to them, they're more than happy to hire you because of your honesty and your just approach to helping them. And that's worked for me many times. So I think that's a huge thing for people, that are looking for business, that when they interact.
Yeah, that's a big lesson actually, is not discount, because a lot of times business owners, like you said, they don't know how to actually say what they're looking for. They're literally just like taking the first step to be like, oh shit, I gotta like post this thing on Upwork and like figure this marketing stuff out. But that, as you know, and as our listeners know, there's tons of different like opportunities for different marketing services that you could implement into your business. And a lot of times, you just need to start the conversation with someone, and you can kind of guide them to making the selection for your service. Sometimes it won't be a good fit, and you're not even going to want to take them on regardless. But it's worth having the conversation because of the fact that a lot of times people don't know what they're asking for. So I think one way that you can weed that out a little bit is take a look at their profile and like see what they're like. If someone sends you a request like that, take a look at their profile, see what they're all about. If they do fit within your target market, then it might be worth having a conversation with them anyway, especially if they're an agency in your case, because you already know that agencies give you a lot of business. So there might be an opportunity to do some other stuff, and you had that conversation and obviously worked out. So that's a really good example of it. Cool. So lead gen and all that fun stuff. You're killing it. I think you're like one of the things that I think is really cool about how you do things, and like your advantage is that you don't necessarily have a problem getting sales. One of the things you're focused on right now is figuring out what to do with all that inflow and how to structure your business in such a way that you can scale and grow a little bit. So can you tell us a little bit about what you've been working on to try and kind of move on with that new endeavor?
Yeah, I'm laughing because Tommy, this is my pain point. So I need all the help I can get in this area. But yeah, I've been trying to expand, and I know that I can, because I know that I have the business to give the work, but I have not been able to get over the block, and I'm sure this is personally something for me, of structuring other employees to give them the workflow to make sure that the quality of work that they're doing is going to be to the standard that I know that I can give to my clients when I'm doing the work. So, you know, it's a big jump to go from a freelancer where I had full control of everything to then become a manager and somebody else is doing the work. So there's definitely an issue with letting go of control that I have not been able to get through yet, that I need to jump. And also a lot of process things and automation that need, you know, that just becomes a much different mindset than what I have been doing. You know, with Google Ads, I taught myself and I figured it out, but then to be able to lay all of that down on paper, really know my process and exactly what has to be done to make sure that it's being managed correctly so that I can check is a whole different ballgame. So it's slow going for me, but I feel I'm, you know, slowly breaking that wall down. I have interviews today. I have a couple more interviews with some people to hire to work, and some haven't worked out, but with every person I've hired, I've learned new things about how I need to manage, how I need to make my expectations clearer, how the communication should work. And, you know, with being a remote team, there's it's difficult. It is very difficult to have people and you're not sitting with them to be able to bounce ideas and discuss, you know, and to know somebody, how they're going to work and stuff like that. So it's definitely more difficult for me to push to this level than it has been for me to be able to gain clients in the industry.
Hmm. And what's your overall goal? Like, what would make you happy in terms of like the number of team members you're trying to get on, the number of clients that you'd like on recurring packages? Like, how big are you trying to grow this thing?
You know, I never thought about a specific goal as far as revenue or anything. My goal has been to create the business or to establish the processes so that I can grow infinitely. So, you know, I want this to be not a machine. I want the quality of the work to still be there, but I want it to be able to kind of work on its own, to where I can be at the I guess, you know, running the company, and the day-to-day stuff is able to move up the way that it needs to. And, you know, I can bring in as much business as I want. And I know that it's going to be able to be handled, you know, and then the process to hire somebody else when the business and this kind of stuff. So I haven't really thought of an end goal, I guess. It was more to be able to expand as I needed. Maybe that is something that I'm missing, is that I don't have a structured, focused goal.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wasn't expecting necessarily a specific answer. I mean, a lot of people have a monetary goal of like, hey, man, if I could get this business to like 20 or 30 or 40 or 50K per month and it was recurring income, then that would be where I'm trying to go. But obviously, you know, one of the things that's on your mind that you're really working on right now to move in that sort of direction, which I think is a really good step one, and I commend you for, is just trying to hire people. And one of the lessons that I think people who are watching this can take away is when you're trying to hire people like that to take over these duties or these outsourced roles that are ultimately the main fulfillment part of the work that you're doing. You need to experiment and you need to bring people on. So I always recommend for people to, you know, do as good of a job as you can trying to locate and find these contractors, hire fast, and also fire fast if they're not working out. I recommend doing like a 2-week trial for people when you onboard them, and just give them as much work as possible, and be very structured and organized when you bring them on board, so you make sure that they're busy enough every day for you to really evaluate their performance. If you hire too soon and you're just kind of like dribbling work out a little by little, or randomly on a project basis, you're not going to get the data that you need to make that decision. So usually, and this will probably like just help calm your nerves a little bit too, as well as you're going through this process. And I know you and I have like talked about this before, but there's a hiring delay when you're bringing anybody on. For the lower level like work, it should be easier. The delay lessens but generally anywhere between like 30 and 90 days is what you need to expect from the time that you say like, okay, I need this person to do X role. From the time you say that to the time that you actually find the right person, it's going to take 30 to 90 days because you need to find them, locate them, and then maybe go through a few different people before you actually get it locked down. So, yeah, it's a journey, and I think it's very worthwhile. And I'm glad that you're still pursuing that. So you've had like some good team members and some good interactions so far. Um, what else is how else has that process been?
So it's funny because I just had a friend here that had contacted me a few months ago telling me that he wanted to do what I'm doing. And I've had a lot of people say that, which I'm sure everybody in our position has, because it looks like we have such a glamorous life, you know. And he's here and very smart, an engineer, but didn't want to go back to corporate and wanted to help, wanted to do what I was doing. A little bit vague. And I thought, okay, great. This is an opportunity. This is somebody that I trust. This is somebody I know. This is somebody I know that is smart. He doesn't have any experience with Google Ads, but that can be taught, right? So our kind of end goal discussion was that he would learn this and take in the process, help me to build out the day-to-day kind of structure for somebody, an SOP and this kind of stuff. And eventually he would move out of that role and we could put somebody else in it, and he would help me build out the structure of the position. And he wanted to ultimately go into some kind of business development role or something like that. So I had helped him, and I kind of trained him to do some Google Ads, and he helped me kind of set up a checklist and stuff. But over the holidays, he wasn't really, not even the holidays, but about 6 weeks, he wasn't really doing what I needed him to do. And this was after we'd been maybe collaborating for a few months already. And he had kind of made a few excuses and was kind of telling me, so I let it go. And then after a couple discussions, I told him, I said, look, I can't, I'm a business owner, I'm a small business owner, and I can help you, but I can't help you so far that it's hurting me also. Yes. So if you really want to help me, you have to help me. And after we came to the discussion, after we discussed a lot of things, he just came to the realization after a few months of working with me that he really isn't cut out for freelance work and startup culture, because it takes a lot of discipline, it takes a lot of self-motivation, and my company is remote. So although we have the opportunity to work face-to-face, everybody else is not. And when I give work and I hire somebody, I hire them with the expectation that they are going to do the work without me having to go through and babysit them. Otherwise, I might as well do the work myself. So this is just something that he isn't used to. He came from corporate, and although he thought corporate was not what he wanted, after he worked and saw how I worked, and that I was messaging him in all hours of the night, and that I was working kind of through the holidays, not that I expected him to do that, but to follow up at least, that he realized that it wasn't something that he was cut out for. So that was a big learning experience for me. I really thought that it was going to be an opportunity for me, because I had somebody that I trusted and already knew and had a relationship with them. But ultimately, I should have, I should have been more maybe clear with the understanding, with the expectations. And, I just probably need to be more rigid and more structured with who I hire, versus being, allowing just anybody that is interested to kind of come on board, and it ends up taking up my time. And now I have to start over again.
Yeah. Well, I think the big lesson there is, and obviously you get better at this over time when you're hiring different people and working with different team members, is just like how to sort of intuitively vet them. And there's some, aside from the fact that it's pretty easy to teach people the technical aspect of like what you're doing. I mean, like working remote and like being on your own and setting your own schedule and having the discipline to sit down and do that every day, and not just live this this dream life that he saw you living before, and realize that you actually have to like put in work to make that happen, is really like the hard part. So now maybe moving forward, like you can just vet more like from a personality standpoint. And I mean, for me, like the mindset stuff is almost more important in terms of like the foundational things that are required to do that. So working with someone that has had experience working remotely or doing their own thing before, I think is oftentimes a must, unless you're really, really trying to bring somebody up that actually wants to. Because there are plenty, I mean, we all started without having any experience doing that before. So there are people at the very beginning that are starting out that really have the drive and the want. But I would say for those type of people as well, they're going to be a lot more proactive. So you're not going to be in a situation like Jen, where she's like literally trying to like help this dude along and like holding his hand, because you can't do that. Like the person has to be like, you have to be in a situation where you're reactive helping this person out, and you're not proactively using your time and energy to actually think about what this person can do. There has to be some sort of like self-starter going on there. So I can really relate to that. And I think that's another topic of discussion in terms of like how you actually like how like what was that process like for you, and how did you develop like those skills when you first went abroad and made that transition from corporate to you know, entrepreneur? Like you're doing your own thing, you've been doing it for a while now, and you've done it successfully. Like what was that like for you at the beginning?
So I was able to transition a little bit because I had a kind of set job when I first went remote. So I didn't go straight from corporate to nomadic and freelancing, which may have made things a little bit easier. But I did work kind of freelance and contractually in New York before. So, and I worked with a lot of startups in New York. So that really helped me to understand how small business owners think and how things just have to get done. How you don't really have to ask questions, maybe a little bit of permission, but when you see something that needs to get done, you just do it. You figure out a way, you research it, you find something, you find some solutions, you offer them on the table, and then you figure out how to run with it. And again, yeah, being proactive is definitely a more necessary trait than technical skills, because technical skills can be taught, especially some of the basic stuff with Google Ads, and being proactive and taking initiative just is kind of innate. And I don't want to say that you can't learn it, but it usually somebody enjoys it or they don't. And this maybe was something that I probably saw with my friend initially, but maybe thought that he could if he wanted to. I do believe that if people really want to, they can. And ultimately, actually, he doesn't. It's uncomfortable for him to be proactive. It's uncomfortable for him to, it was very overwhelming for me to give him a task and be like, hey, figure out how to do this. For me, that's enjoyable. And I think that is really a different personality. For him, it was very overwhelming. And I maybe didn't even realize it was so overwhelming when I was throwing things at him, because I just saw that, hey, you're smart, you can figure this out. But for him, he's like, I don't know what to do. And so it became really, maybe a bit traumatic. When I stopped freelancing and I wanted to get into Google Ads and SEO, where I was kind of working my own, I kept a stable job on the side. So I think I was working part-time for a company in the US, remote. And while I was learning SEO, and I picked up one client and made sure I kind of knew what I was doing, and then picked up another client, and this kind of, so I really transitioned gradually into it as far as going fully freelance. But I definitely think that I have a inner level of hustling that it didn't make me question kind of what needs to be done or how is it going to do it. It's never been kind of it's just, oh, this has to get done, so I'm figuring out a way and I'm going to do it. I think, a lot of it comes with self-confidence or being able to be, comfortable failing, because of course some of my None of the clients I started with do I have now. So clearly I wasn't doing something right, or I wasn't good enough for my price point or whatever it was. But as I've been doing this longer, my clients have stayed with me longer over time. So, you know, you get better. And I can assume that on my path to become a manager or an agency owner, that, you know, I now have to look at hiring and managing the same way that I was looking at building, learning SEO and Google Ads. Is I really need to learn it. It's a different skill. It's totally different mindset, and I need to become better at it with every person that I hire. I need to look at how I can optimize my processes for hiring and managing, and that is, you know, that's the only way that I'm going to be successful at a higher level.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is a different skill, and it takes like a totally different mindset. And I think oftentimes it really gets overlooked because you really think that the only thing that matters is like doing the work for your clients or your customers, and just making sure that that component is taken care of and sorted, which is something that you can own and control. But when you're trying to bring other people on, I think what happens is a lot of times we just think that process is going to be easier than it was to figure out how to do the actual fulfillment of the work that we're selling. Um, and we don't look at it as another thing. We don't look at it as another thing that we have to learn. We're just like, oh, cool, there's people available that I can hire. But you don't realize that if you don't do it intentionally, what happens is you end up spinning your wheels. Because if you go at it like half-ass, you're going to find half-ass candidates, and they're going to do like a shit job here and there. And like, then you're going to discourage, you're going to get quit. But just like anything, you have to have like, you have to suspend your disbelief a little bit. Just be like, okay, I can find the right person. I know this person exists, and just commit to the fact that it's going to take a little longer, like back to that hiring delay that we talked about, because you're going to have to learn, you're going to have to go through all these processes, and then that time frame will shorten over time. But that's a huge lesson. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. Okay, now on to some more fun stuff about like your journey and where you've been over the past however many years. Like, how long have you been on the road? How long have you been nomadic? What different countries have you lived in? And you know, what has that experience been like overall for you?
Okay, so I moved to Goa in 2015. So I've been here, based here for around 5 years now. However, the first few years I spent at least a month or so back in the US, and then at least 2 months in Thailand. So I'm traveling probably every few months or so, but I travel in a way that I kind of base myself. I'm not traveling and visiting a new country every week or something like that. I found that that's very exhausting, and it's not as interesting for me also. Last year when I met Tommy, I was 6 months in Mexico doing my scuba instructor course, because it was something that I felt I wanted to do, and I didn't want this to be my whole life, and I wanted a hobby. So I pursued that, and I was able to, keep my business going at the same time. My resume and my LinkedIn and everything shows that I'm in New York. I work US hours in the morning to the afternoon, and then I work again at night. And I do those same hours when I'm in the US and when I was in Mexico as well. So I'll work from around 8 to 1, 2 in the afternoon. Then I wrap up for a bit, and then I get back online in the evening to follow up on anything that I need to do. So whether I'm in this hemisphere or that hemisphere, my schedule actually stays the same. And I flat out from the beginning tell my clients, this is my availability. And I've never had anybody really have a problem with it. So it's worked out really, really well for me. And it's something that has kept me motivated to continue this work when it gets boring and when it gets tedious, because for me, this is the life. I work a lot, but I have, I spend more time with my friends and my family now than when I used to live in New York City and I got 2 weeks of holiday off, but I work at the airport, and when I visit my parents, I work Monday through Friday. I, take the weekends off. I only see people in the evenings. So it's quite structured, but unstructured at the same time. I try to keep my schedule pretty regular. One thing I will say is, when I first started freelancing, I worked all the time. I was so anxious about responding to clients. I would answer them. When I was out, I would try to take a phone call. If I was at dinner, even, here, because it's daytime over there, I was stressed out if I would miss it. I was, stressed out if I couldn't, when I was flying, that they couldn't reach me. I worked on the weekends. I would work Saturdays and Sundays if I had emails. And now over the past, probably, I'd say year and a half, I really just limited my, I've set my schedule. And I think that that's something that as entrepreneurs, as freelancers, we often don't do enough of. And we don't realize that as we are building our careers, as we are creating our life the way that we want it, which is why we left corporate, we can also create these same boundaries and still have the free time that we want, and not lose track of why we did this in the first place, which was to have our freedom. So I think that that's something that is super important for everybody to remember. No matter where they are in their entrepreneurial journey, Tommy.
Yeah, dude, I actually really agree. I really appreciate you dropping that little bit of wisdom on us. I think that's actually a pretty good place for us to kind of wrap up here. But one final thing that I want to ask you, which I think will be really beneficial, is for people that are looking to either get started on this for the very first time or kind of level up to the area that you are with your business. Like, what would be your biggest piece of advice for someone who's either starting from zero or has like a little bit of traction, who would like to establish themselves in a way that's a little bit more comfortable, like you have?
Piece of advice. I would say, maybe this is a little bit vague, but I would say, listen to your instinct, and do what is easy. Because when you're freelancing, when you're starting a business, it is all too common for everybody to try and do everything. Again, that feast or famine thing, we feel like the money isn't going to come, but it will. And if you're honest, if you're working hard, the money does come. But when you start to try and take on everything, you're never going to do it. You're overwhelmed. You're super overextended, and you're not going to be able to give the quality work to the clients that you want to.
Yeah.
So really narrowing down your offerings and really just doing what is easy. If the client that is coming to you you're talking to them and you're like, great, this is great. You get off the phone call, then you realize, how am I going to start this? That might not be the client for you. Find the ones that are easy for you. And Tommy, you gave me a really good piece of advice, because I'm not doing a lot of outbound lead generation, but you told me, why don't you look for the clients that you want instead of waiting for them to come to me? And wow, I never even thought of that. But even if you're starting, there's going to be there's going to be a task that you're really good at, that's really easy, that you can do, more or less better than everything else. Stick to that. Find those same clients. Find the client that is very similar to the client that you already have. Ask them for referrals. Ask them if they know other people in their industry that would like services like this. And, don't be afraid to, don't be afraid to say no, for sure.
That's brilliant. Yeah, I really appreciate that. I think all of that is like really helpful, and all of that is very intimately related to like your journey in particular. But things that you've actually gone through the process and learned through experience. So I think that wisdom is going to be really helpful to anyone that's listening. Jen, I really appreciate it. Who Dandelion? Do we have Dandelion in the background, right?
Yeah, Dandelion, because he was fluffy like a dandelion when we first got him, although he's not super fluffy now. He is tearing apart my towel.
Wow, Dandelion. Well, Dandelion and Jen, this has been one of the most unique experiences that I've had in terms of having another creature involved in an interview, but it was awesome and it was fun, and I really, really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Tommy. It was nice chatting with you.